start from 2 to 3 to 3.5. 3.5 was probably my favorite, and I think there was just more. And maybe it was just part of the time frame as well, because it was during the time of like the original, well, not the original, but the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings coming out, and those movies and all that stuff, and Harry Potter was out, so it was all this stuff that was in theaters,
Fantasy.
right? So you'd go watch that stuff, and then you come home, and then you could play Dungeons and Dragons, and so there was that whole community around, because I was living in LA at the time, and my neighbor, I was living in Woodland Hills, which is
Okay.
in the valley, the San Fernando Valley. Probably one of the worst neighborhoods I've ever lived in my life, but it was one of the best times I ever had in my life. But
It's weird how that happens.
isn't it, right? But my neighbors, when I moved into the little gated community is what I'll call it, but it was more like, it was like a weird, I don't know what it was called, jail? I don't know what it was, but my neighbors across the hall, their names were Thor and Odin. That was their given names. They saw that I was moving in, and they were like, hey, let us help you. So they helped me, and they were like, where? And they were about to go out to the movie. I was like, just go to the movie. That's fine. Don't cancel your movie. They're like, no, we've seen the same movie like 3 times. We're just going again. I was like, well, what are you going to go watch? They're like, we're watching Lord of the Rings. I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, no, go do your thing. So then I went with them on their 4th trip to go watch Lord of the Rings. And it just kind of began, because they're like, hey, usually we have this thing where we go watch the movie, then we'll come back and we'll play some D&D. And I'd already been like playing D&D, but more like just with friends, like from work and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So to actually play with like strangers, quote unquote, was a new thing for me. And just seeing, so like the DM was a guy named Tom, and he worked as a builder of sets at Universal Studios at the time. So he would come in with these sets that were just like homemade sets that were just crazy and incredible.
For D&D?
Right, for D&D. And he just set it up on this
cool.
huge table at Thor's house, or Thor's apartment. And we just have these all-night campaigns. And then go to sleep, wake up the next day, and continue the campaign. And it was like that for like a couple weeks straight. So it was, as far as D&D, that was the best time. So when you ask me what my favorite edition is, I think it's tied to those experiences, more so than like maybe what was in the book. It was more the experience that I got out of it.